Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Claire Markwick, and this is Real Life Business. Welcome to episode number 3 of Real Life Business. This week I am talking to Nicole McHenry, a businesswoman with a difference. Far from your average number crunching accountant, Nicole is the business services kind, the forensic kind, the kind you get in to help you work out where you are and connect you to where you actually want to be. With postgrads in business, higher education, management and project management, and studies in health science and innovation, she's been around making waves for a while now. Social enterprise is her passion, NDIS is her cause. She renovates, builds and develops both here and internationally, and crafts grants for artists, musicians and corporations alike. Strategic plans, she chases venture capital, and she provides businesses with all the advice they need and then some. Her style is empowerment. She listens to your story, and through those conversations and sharing, she ignites something within her clients and her friends that often remains buried deep. Those passions that help us get up, show up, and keep going. And she's done that for herself as well. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. Nicole has a refreshing perspective on life that's both inspiring and calming, and she's got some great gold that she shares with us in this conversation. So we start off with Nicole telling us a bit more about herself and how she got to be doing what she's doing right now.
Life is a bit of a continuum. So what I'm currently doing, in the place I've really found for myself at the moment, is I work for the Business Enterprise Centre. And what that is, it's government funded. Why it fits for me is because I do the accounting work that I do the business work that I do. I suppose and social enterprise is my kind of side hustle, but it always has a thread through everything.
Yeah.
The thing that I really do is work out how I can work with people and help them get to where they want to go. And the accounting side of my experience is because they get stuck in it. They get stuck in the stuff that I'm good at.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm an accountant, but I'm probably, not the boring kind, I like to think. But more than anything, it's given me a lot of experience of different industries along the way. So I suppose I always say, people, what do you do? I say, I solve problems. So I've just got an uncanny knack of working out how, what's gone on, how people work and how things have happened.
Yeah.
And that's where the accounting boring stuff is most valuable. So it's actually using what is kind of a structured everyday thing to help people get to where they want to go. So what this gives me the opportunity to do is work with businesses and work with people to get their dreams, into reality, or get them unstuck. And the government funds those things because it's all about, building economic growth and that sort of thing. So it allows me to help people without them having to say, oh, but I can't afford your fees, Nicole. Yes. So it's wonderful. But it also means that people are far more open about what they really want. And I think that's what's come out of the last year. People have realised that it's okay. I think they've had a lot of time to think about it too.
Yeah, I think you're
right. It's actually okay to say, you know what, this is what I'd really like to do. So it gives me that opportunity. Gives me the opportunity to work with people where they're at and say, have you thought about this? Without them having to say, oh, yeah, but we can't do that.
I think this year has been, whilst there's been so many challenges and there's been so many businesses really adversely affected, like you say, it has given people the time to actually just stop and check in and say, well, what is it that I want to be doing? Is what I've been busy with, what I'm now not allowed to do anymore, for example, is that what I want to continue to do? Or is this my opportunity to stop, reset, pivot, and go again? You would have seen a lot of that, I would imagine.
Yeah, and there's, I think middle of last year, there was a lot of people that felt quite broken. And I think it's actually been a really good stepping stone for them to realise that how robust they actually are. So that what's come out of it, like, one of the sayings that I really love is you weren't born to pay bills and die. But, you know, you have to survive.
You do.
But
Yeah.
people's non-negotiables, I think, have changed. Like people's decisions as to what's important to them has changed, or that it's just reiterated that's what they thought was important.
Yeah.
So I sat with a group of artists last night working through grant writing for them to get their craft and get their, to get their art back on track. It's that reboot which re-engages them in the community. And the whole concept of being able to get support without having to try and negotiate a grant application. They're just sitting there saying, where have you been? And
where have you been my whole life?
Yeah, and it's as much about saying, okay, let's look at the skills that I have and my quirky background between arts and everything else. It gives me a language that allows me to help them see what's possible.
Yeah.
And the excitement is wonderful. I think people are, and that's probably, you know, the whole gives me joy thing. That's what gives me joy.
I can totally relate to that. I think, you know, myself coming from an accounting background as well, in public practice, you know, I felt like I was this machine, you know, this transactional machine, just churning out BAS after BAS, and then tax return, financial statements, BAS, tax return, financial statements. And I felt like I was just on this, like, let's say, transactional machine that I couldn't jump off of. And yes. And then I kind of moved into commercial finance and thought, oh, this is going to be a bit more exciting. But then it's like, you know, transaction, month-end reporting, transaction, month-end reporting, quarterly forecasting, annual budget. It's the same cycle. And so to break free of that and be able to help businesses, like you say, in a way that you can see that energy and that like engagement and excitement for what they do come back, that really gives us the energy, enthusiasm and excitement in what we do as well, doesn't it? I mean, I'm speaking for you as well now. I'm trusting, you're nodding, so I'm trusting you agree.
I totally agree. And I think that obviously you're younger than me. People say, oh, you know, what did you do in your 20s? Like, I was really lucky. My background was cutting edge tax planning. I thought that was normal, you know, big fun stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing, and doing things a little differently. So I was really lucky that was what I kind of cut my teeth on. But there's no way I was in the circles or had the experience or saw it play out when I actually had that knowledge. So I had lots of different experience in different industries along the way, and just, you know, with different people and, you know, personal, professional, collaborative, networking, study. It's only now that I really feel like I can pull out of a really lovely, rich bag of experiences and say, oh, you know, I think we can do this. What do you think? How does that sound? And I also think my age, maturity, what word am I looking for? Just the point where I'm at in my career then allows me to look at things with a different lens. So, you know, I don't take things personally like I would have in my 20s. You know, and even if it is personal, I don't have to take it. I can decide. I don't have to take it personally. So I can look at what's going on, and then, which is kind of, I suppose, a tip already, you know, I can consider it. I've got perspective, and I kind of got a bit of a breather. My youngest is 19. I had, you know, a step family for a while. So, you know, we had 12 to 15 around the dinner table, and I absolutely loved it.
Wow.
But it was just divine. And
how big were your grocery bills? Oh my gosh.
You know what? Dinner was the whole production. But, you know, I wouldn't give that time away, but I'm really pleased that they're all off my hands now, for various reasons. So now I have the peace and the space to do it. So I think part of the reason why I probably felt like I was banging my head against a brick wall in my 30s and 40s was because I had so many other responsibilities. And much as I enjoyed it, there was a frustration that I had back then because I had probably potentially more energy then. Whereas now I may not necessarily have as much energy. I do, however, have the time and space to really do to put back in, which is hence the social enterprise side of things.
Yeah. I think you've mentioned it a few times in what you've said, in as much as your past and the experience you got from this time and the experience you got from that time. I'm a believer that one of my core beliefs is that we are on a lifelong learning journey, aren't we? And this was something that I had to overcome, because when I hit 37 and realized, you know what, I don't want to be doing this transactional accounting for the next 40 years. But holy hell, I can't change now, because what a waste of 15 years that's been. So I did a lot of work on my mindset there to go, well, you know what, whilst I might not be doing that exact thing anymore, I can't unlearn all of that. I can't unlearn the experiences. I can't unlearn the lessons that it has taught me. Whilst I might not use the intricacies of the technical knowledge, there's so much life experience in that 15 years that is going to then be the building block to the next thing. Would you agree? You sort of, again, there's nodding away, in as much as life is a constant journey, isn't it? A constant evolution is something I've spoken about in a previous episode. What are some of the major sort of milestones for you, the major hurdles that you've overcome that have now built you this wonderful toolkit that you can tap into now?
Good question.
How much time have we got?
I agree with you. I think life is about, people talk about having lessons in life. I look at it in terms of experiences and relationships. So relationships bring you the experiences, it's about that. So it's about working out where you fit as well. And as I say, rich existence, very exciting. So my mum's a pharmacist. She was one of the first women through pharmacy college. So on my mum's side, and my dad was a commercial artist. Wow. So he built mover floats. He used to dress windows, and he was a sculptor and an artist. So, that's my gypsy side coming out. So what it means is I've got this nice balance. And I think that probably adds to, the whole idea of that there's a gift in everything, even if it doesn't feel like it is, because I think knowledge gives you choice and perspective. So, and I look back now, I'd always wanted to be a stockbroker. Loved it. That's the numbers thing. And I used to bang on the door of Potterwarby all the time, and they used to look at me, little girly, go away, And I thought, well, I suppose I have to study then. So I went and was working full-time at the stock exchange and doing a full-time study load, because I thought, that's what I want to do. Never ever worked as a stockbroker, but loved the stock exchange, really enjoyed that. Swore I was never going to be anywhere near Swinburne University, and then landed an amazing job at that accounting firm I was telling you about, across the road from Swinburne. So I used to look out my window and say, guess what? Never. Exactly. And I've I met my husband along the way, my husband number one. So 20 years down the track, I decided that was not a good idea. But in the meantime, I decided that the childcare in the regional town that I was living in was not so good. So I decided I'd build my own and license it and register it, and that's it.
So hang on. Let's just pause. Let's just make sure everyone's just caught up on what you've just said. You were working the stock exchange, studying to work in the stock exchange.
With my accounting degree. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then got a job in an accounting firm, like you were talking about before, and then realized that. So then got married, had kids, but realized, well, hang on, the childcare isn't the greatest here. So instead of, I don't know, bitching or complaining or carrying on or using that as a reason not to move forward, you're like, hang on, well, why don't I do something about that? Why don't I build my own childcare centre? That's what you said, right?
I found a 14 square hardy plank house and designed a building and built a 120 place childcare centre.
That's incredible.
So the childcare
on the side of everything else.
And it's funny because being a country town, everyone hated me, but they never in their wildest dreams imagined it would be just me. So they figured that I had a bunch of international clients. So they they were rude, but they left me alone because they didn't know who was behind it.
Right.
So yeah, it was kind of amusing. So yeah, the things you do, but I just figure that's probably that'll be my parents' upbringing, and it's the idea that if you're going to give it a go, give it a go. Because really, what's the worst that can happen? You have to sell your house, and you have to go get a job doing something else.
Yeah.
If that's really the worst there is, that's about as bad. You know, that's not really that bad. You know, plenty of people don't even get that opportunity.
I think I think that sounds such a simple thing that you've just said, and the words are very simple words. You know, what's the worst that can happen, and it's not so bad. But like the mindset to actually believe that is like that. It takes a lot to actually believe it, doesn't it? It's very easy to say the words, but to actually sit back and go, well, you know what?
And
the worst that's going to happen is that I'm going to run out of money. I have to sell my house and I have to get a job. But I can deal with that. And then you push on regardless. That's awesome.
And that's it. Thank you. That's an attribute to be my big European family, my parents. But also, I think along the way, I just had this ridiculous sense of confidence that wasn't knocked out of me as a kid. And the numbers thing, it made sense because I figure I can always fall back on something. And that's probably the key.
Yeah.
Education, access to education gives people opportunities, which is why whatever I do has got some sort of thread back to access and education, because if you can give people access to education, then they have opportunity. What they do with it is up to them.
Correct.
And I always had drummed into me since I was, old enough to remember, education, get an education, and then you can do what you want. And it's so true. It's so true. And because I knew that I'd done the study, and I worked really hard, like it did nearly take me out doing it, but it gave me choice, and it still gives me choice to this day. It gives me a balance of credibility, but also a balance of understanding. So, I've got the qualification. I've got about 7 of them now. And I'm doing a Bachelor of Health Science at the moment. You talked before about, what am I going to do at 37? Am I chucking all this away? And you're not. I've gone back a couple of years ago to do a Bachelor of Health Science in Nutrition and Naturopathy, which is not accounting related at all.
No,
but it's something I've always had an interest in. And you know what? I want to.
It's so refreshing hearing you say, well, I want to, I can, so I'm gonna.
It's the thread of that whole, what's the worst that can happen? So this is how it all plays out. It all plays out in, I think as a teenager, you got the doom and gloom thing. And I think it's kind of the anti-doom and gloom thing. And you're right, it's mindset. I've got this uncanny ability to just figure there's always a way. There's always a way. Even if it doesn't feel good, there's always a way.
Yeah, I love that. And just on adding to that, I remember I heard a mentor of mine once say a few years ago, she said that nothing has meaning except the meaning we put to it. And she was talking about she got really deep and was talking about like quantum physics and all this sort of stuff, but I picked up on that bit. I'm like, nothing has meaning except the meaning we put to it. So nobody says anything, like nothing happens, like nothing, we don't experience anything that already has a meaning attached to it. The meaning is a construct of what we put on it based on our own beliefs, experiences, memories, whatever. And when that sunk in, I was like, holy shit, that has the power to change people's lives. It certainly felt like I had the power to change my life now, because it, like you said before, like even if someone says something personal and someone might look at it and go, geez, that was a personal attack. How we decide to react to it totally dictates our experience of it, doesn't it?
And I think we've got to be in the right space and the right time. It's like you can hear things a million times, and then one day you're standing there getting coffee and you're like, you can see my life revolves around coffee. And I get coffee and you're just like going, oh, I hadn't actually thought about that. What are you talking about? Oh, nothing. Just, latte, almond milk, please. But I think it's, sometimes it's a catalyst that makes you change your mindset, and sometimes your mindset helps you through whatever's going on. We've talked about my second husband, who passed away a couple of years ago. He was the most gorgeous man. He really was. And we bonded over the concept of no regrets, not knowing what was in front of us.
Wow.
We had the same concept of no regrets, and he'd been working for, I think by the time he sold his workshop, he'd been working in it, and very successfully so. He used to race cars, the whole lot, loved it. It was nearly 30 years, but it was just killing him. It was just stealing the happiness from him, because all he ever wanted to do was work on American cars. I said, well, why don't you just do that? And it's that whole roll off. So why don't you just do that? Yeah, and it's easy when your wife is, can kind of do things too, rather than it's just him. So, and it took him about 6 months to even entertain the concept, because he was old school in terms of provider, structure. This is a business that I have with my family. What are people going to anticipate on? They're going to think I'm nuts. This is the position I've built. So I just didn't entertain that. God love him. And he said, well, what if we can't pay the bills? I said, well, we just sell stuff. What if we can't pay? I said, we just sell stuff. I said, what would you rather do? And at this stage, we had no clue what was coming. He was the most, strong, kind of vibrant personality, larger than life, healthy as a horse, kind of used to laugh about it. And, it's just funny how it works. Yeah. And honestly, he just, so against everyone saying, oh, my goodness, because they had this expectation of what he was, and this crazy wife that he'd married who was encouraging him to buy American cars and walk away from this persona.
Stability.
Exactly. And surprise, he was embraced by the whole fraternity and is, very well known for it. But what it meant is that he had 3 years doing exactly what he wanted to do.
How awesome is that?
Yeah. And the, the race car, you got to sell the race car. And I just turned around one day and said, the day he says he doesn't enjoy racing is the day we sell it. Because I kind of got sick of hearing and watching it going on. And I get it, because not everyone has the same mindset. But imagine if you had sold the race car and didn't race. Imagine if you hadn't gone and done what he wanted to do. So that mindset that I have supported his dreams. And when I look at what my kids are doing, they just don't think there's anything they can't do. They just know that maybe it's not now. So, and they'll learn through maturity as to what's realistic or not. But if I could, if I've equipped them, armed them with that concept, then I've done my job.
Oh, I love that. I think again, another, I'm a big one for quotes, and they really, some of them just forget in one ear out the other, but others of them really stick with me. And that it's not really a quote, it's more just a way of talking about something. I was, instead of saying, oh, I can't do that, it's I can't do that yet. And just sticking that yet on the end again just completely changes the meaning to it, as in, okay, maybe to go off and work the stock exchange, I need to have a degree in accounting and finance, or maybe to go and open a childcare centre, I need to get licensed and regulated and stuff like that. So it's, it's I can't just do it right now, but I can do it once I put all the steps into place. And it's again such a simple tweak, isn't it? But it just opens up so much opportunity.
And I think, we say there's so many people that just don't have the luxury of a tomorrow. And it's a great saying, and it's true, but it's so much bigger than that. Because if you're not living your today, there's no point, which sounds like an awful statement to make, but if you're not living your today, like there's no guarantee of 3 o'clock, if you're not living your today, then why not? Why not? And you've got it's a way of thinking, it's a headspace, and it'll either come from the catalyst of something that happens to you or happens to anyone around you to kind of kick you in the guts a little bit, which is the harder way of doing it. And that's what I think, there's a catalyst for change with a lot of people, and you hear people's amazing stories and you're like, oh my goodness. But yeah, you can kind of change now, make the change now, or just don't feel like you have to, like enjoy what you're doing now.
It's so, 'cause you've clearly, your how I articulate this, your journey to getting to that stage has come from experiencing loss and grief and those big things, like you say, those big catalysts that almost force you. Well, again, they don't force you, because it again is a choice. You can live at the effect of the things that have happened to us, or you can use them as a catalyst to propel us forward, can't we? Again, everything's a choice. So you have experienced those catalytic, is that a word? Events.
Yeah, absolutely they are. Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who is sitting here thinking, well, on the surface, everything's dandy, I shouldn't be complaining, because this was me. I'm like, so here's my situation from a few years ago. I got a 6-figure job. I've got a beautiful husband. I've got a lovely house. I've got 2 happy, healthy children. We've got, hubby and I have got a car each. We've got a camper trailer. We've got a boat, motorbikes. Life is this perfect, looking at it from the outside, everything's dandy. Yet inside, I felt completely and utterly like, I had no words even to describe it. Yeah. How I've described it on other episodes is, have you seen the movie Trolls, the kids' movie Trolls? When they don't get their hugs, all their color drains out of them. That was me. Like, I felt like all my color had drained out of me, and I was just gray. I was just on autopilot. I was just doing my thing. So I know what I did, but I want to hear what advice you would give to someone who's sitting here listening to this podcast in that state right now.
There's a couple of things. One is, never be so busy making a living that you cannot be making a life.
Ooh, that's good.
My clients will tell you, some of them call me a lovely sledgehammer, but my clients will, because I believe, you've got family that will pacify you. You've got people that aren't your tribe that will tell you what you want to hear. Me, there's a question that I ask them. I say, you've got 2 weeks to live and you have to work. What would you be doing? And they go, oh, I have to work. Yeah, you have to work. So what would you actually be doing? It doesn't mean you chuck your job in tomorrow and change it. It means you start to look at can you incorporate what you like about what you think that other job is in what you're doing? Can you make a change so that you don't actually have to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater? Mm-hmm. Or maybe think about what it is that floats your boat. Is that what you're missing out on in your personal life? In other words, why don't you join something or incorporate that? So the concept of working, I had, I think the last full-time job I had, though I did a contract a couple of years ago that nearly took me out with the hours, but it was fantastic, and I'm glad it's over. But I think it was like I was probably about 24, and so for me, I've not had a normal kind of work life.
Mm-hmm.
No.
What's normal?
Exactly. But I have always had the sense of inner strength, I think, and inner sense of self, that and I actually think I got this through the accounting ethics unit, but that's a whole other story, is that always have a bit of a slush fund on the side, mm-hmm. so that you never have to stay where you are and compromise your integrity. And I would say, so if you think about all those things we've talked about, like if it's not right for you, walk away. What's the worst you have to do? You just sell stuff. Mm-hmm. It's certainly got that same thread through it.
Yeah, it's having that rainy day fund, as I like to call it. I sort of we
typical slush fund. Says Nicole. Have your slush fund, she says. His shoe fund. Oh dear.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think it's so, as I said before, it's so refreshing to hear this way of looking at things. And I think this is something that a bit of the journey that I've come on. And again, I feel apologies if it sounds like a broken record, in as much as I realized that I put in that gray space, I put a lot of emphasis on the fact that, yes, we had a lovely house, but it wasn't the house on acreage that we wanted. And so when we had that, then I'd feel better. Yes, I had a good 6-figure job, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to be doing. So when I had that step up, and when I was doing this, then I'd be happy. When that boss retires and that person becomes my boss, then I'll be happy. And I was putting my future happiness onto so many external things without having any comprehension of the fact that none of that was ever going to make me happy. And we would buy that house, or I'd upgrade my car, or we'd go on that holiday, and I'd still feel grey. And that's the dangerous spiral to be on, isn't it?
I think we are brought up to put up with and to be respectful and to, try and find balance in all that. And I think the key is to look at the things that you can control and look at the things that you can't control. Because, much as I've got this lovely upbringing with all sorts of things going on, Mum was very authoritarian. And no was something I heard a lot. And she was like that because Dad was totally the opposite. Extremes of anything are not a good thing.
Yeah.
So in my head, it's always no. And that's why I think I probably started to spread my wings early and go, well, why? You start to question.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing, which probably leads on from that, is the concept of some things that you're connected to by DNA and sometimes some things you're not. That helped me that was the last piece in the puzzle in terms of my first marriage, and also, family with my step family and everything that goes on after all of that. Work, it's the same concept. Nicole, you are not connected to that by DNA, you're connected to it by experience. The ones you're connected to by DNA, they're your DNA. The rest of you come together, you have a connection, and then you go, and the connection is done.
Yeah.
Whereas when it comes to my kids, when it comes to my family, my DNA, that's who we are. And that's a different connection. So it's that saying, what controls you? What do you have control of? And then you've got a potential iota of hope at identifying how you manage it.
Absolutely. And I'm not putting words in your mouth, but just clarifying what you just said there, in as much as I'm the believer in that when we surround ourselves with the right people, we can feel we've got the support to do anything. And just because we're connected to someone by DNA, if we've got someone in our family unit that's dragging us down or pulling us down, or is always the naysayer, or is always the one, I'm physically pulling down as I'm talking. If we've got someone that's draining that energy just because we're connected to them by DNA, they're our auntie, our uncle, our cousin, our sister, our whatever, doesn't mean that we can't distance ourselves from them. We can't suddenly say, hey, you're not my sister anymore, or whatever. But at the same time, we can choose to not engage in certain conversations with that person, for example. Can't we? Like we have the choice. Like you said previously, we have the choice in everything, don't we?
Absolutely. I come from a huge European family, and we don't all get along.
That's okay. And
I'm probably one of the few that are happy to agree to disagree and choose my own sanity space. And say thank you, but no.
I love that.
And I'm actually the first generation that doesn't work on guilt. in my nice European family. So there you go, it's out there. Because it's like generational thing, it's kind of, and anyone in that will know what I'm talking about. So I don't work on that. I do not work on guilt, which is probably why one of my key non-negotiables, I would say, is disrespect. There's some people know that some people don't recognize that this is what they're doing, but other people, that's what they're doing. So you go, okay. So it's being able to, whether it's family or whether it's just people around or work, all the rest of it, if it starts to kind of suck the life out of you, that's usually got a big component to it. So you can't respect yourself if you don't stop other people from doing it. And sometimes that's a big process. Sometimes it's a timing process, depending on who it is and where it fits. Yeah. And that's where I suppose my mindset of, I can just walk away. And, I don't think if I didn't have the education I had, and I went back to study, like I finished year 12 with B grade units and stuff, and I went and worked for a number of years. I went back to study because I realised without study, I was going to limit my options. In other words, yes, my parents were right. It wasn't for 10 years I didn't go back. Like 10 years later, I went back, and that's when things started to change. But, oh, my God, I brought so much experience with me to the table. I got so much more out of my study because of it.
Yeah. Isn't that just a great lesson? That to me, I mean, I have I think both my husband and I have a opinion on our kids. Our kids are 10 and 7. And whilst I don't want them to disrespect school and give up on school completely, I hear so many stories like yours, like that, where, where we can go back and we can do things at a time that's right for us. So year 12, at the time you were in year 12, like maybe you weren't ready. You weren't meant to be there then, perhaps. There was life you had to live. There were lessons you had to learn, and you've gone back and done it later.
I had to meet. Yeah.
I don't know, like, you can get all spiritual and woo-woo like that, it wasn't the time, it wasn't meant to be. I don't know, but I think, again, it's a very liberating, very refreshing attitude to have when bringing up our kids. Like, the biggest thing I say to our boys is I want you to try. Like, I don't care necessarily about grades per se. Yeah. Like the grade to me, and this is probably going to spark a whole other can of worms, a whole other discussion. It's more a metric for a school's performance than anything else. If my boys are happy, if my boys are healthy, and if they give things a go and have that attitude of giving things a go, then I feel it's a successful parent. I think we've done our job as a parent. Like you said, the lessons, how you've set your kids up to think, that is more important than a grade to me. I think that's a major life lesson, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a head of school for a while. That will surprise you. And I got the opportunity to build this school that had, I think, a couple of classes in it, just through TAFE and university, because we had credits into master's programs and all sorts of fun stuff. And I think there was about 400 enrollments by the time I finished. And I've got students still today who message me on LinkedIn or what's going on. So they just say, oh, I can't believe you knew what we needed. And all I did was listen to what they wanted, and I knew what they needed to get where they wanted to go. So between actually listening to what they wanted and designing assessments and innovation programs and things around what would spark them, and knowing what I needed in terms of outcomes and modular completion rates and all. They said, oh, you've got the highest modular completion rate in the sector. How? In the whole of TAFE, actually. And they said, how? And I said, well, give them what they want and they will complete it.
Funny that.
So I was popular in some circles and not very popular in others.
I can quite imagine.
It was all about what is it, and that's where, as we talked about, the whole idea of accounting. I'm not an accountant in what I do in so many areas, but all that amazing education about structure and process and compliance, none of that phases me at all.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a grant application to do, give me a business plan to do, give me some cash flows. Let's pick it apart. What do they want?
Mm.
And I can tell you, if there's a quick and easy way to do it,
You'll find it.
I'm there. Because we just need to, and this is the box we need to tick. This is what somebody needs. What do they want? Let's work out what they want. Let's work out what you bring to the table, and let's bring it together so you can get on and do what you want to do.
Yes, I remember that was what got me through uni. You know, like I've done I do some work with youth as well, and a big thing that came out in the sessions with these year 12 kids was that we're not taught how to study. We're taught content. We're not taught how to study. And I remember the major thing that I think was like the cha-ching at uni for me was, well, maybe it's more around my A level, so around that year 12 time in the UK, was I learned what I had to do, what the assessors were looking for. So I could have written this beautiful essay, you know, that was fantastic, and it might have been correct, but if it wasn't within the criteria of what they marked against, you know, that's the criteria that they mark against. It doesn't matter how good that essay is. So I had to learn how to craft my answers to fit that box. Where now, whilst, you know, again, there's a whole discussion that can come from that, you know, learning to fit a box, is that the right thing to do? But I think like what you've just said there is, if we can take that concept and apply it to anything, it's like, let's what does the outcome need to be? What are people looking for? How can we create a way to get that outcome? I think that's kind of what you were just saying, and I didn't just throw a random story in there.
Because it's about, what is the assessments, what do you want? Like I used to rewrite assessments because I know how to make it fit the unit, you see. And so I used to rewrite them in discussion with the students about what project. So I knew what they needed to cover. If it was something that they were actually working on doing, like, why reinvent the wheel? You know, that's innovation is about not reinventing the wheel. It's about working out how to make the wheel work for you. You know, it's about what value add can we do? We don't need to reinvent it. There is already a wheel.
Yes, we already have a wheel.
Exactly. So the projects and the fun stuff that we did, and you know, I'll be honest, it made things far more fun for me when I was working at stupid o'clock.
I bet. Yeah.
So it was satisfying for me, and it was it got the runs on the board, so that I got to then I said, oh well, there you go, see, it's profitable, so almost get out of my way now, let me build.
Leave me be.
Exactly. And as long as you get the numbers, as long as you tick the box, as long as the criteria is met, if I can make that work, then the rest of the stuff is your oyster. You know, the rest of the stuff is, let's do it. As long as they're getting what they want, what floats your boat, what ticks them. Then I'll go, how do you do that? I go, I just know what we need to give them. So the learning happens organically anyway.
Yeah, it's awesome. It sounds like through the stories you've shared, you've hit I don't know if roadblocks is the right word, but challenges, professionally, personally, emotionally, along the way. Like that is life, isn't it? This roller coaster of up and downs. What is the thing that keeps you going? What is your like internal energy drive that keeps you going through thick and thin?
I think, and it kind of comes back to, I have this life to live, and not everyone gets the opportunities that I've got. I've either got them, I've made them, whatever it is. like, breathe in joy. You know, if I'm gone tomorrow, I'm gone tomorrow. I ain't going anywhere, I can tell you that. It's like, why, if not, what do I say the other way? If not now, then when? And, you know, the last year is probably, I do some mentoring with some women in business here. And one of them, which is kind of part of me giving back, you know, what's the thing that I wish someone had shared with me? And it allows me to be that unreasonable friend that says, well, yeah, is that what you really want? What does that look like? You know, and they don't have to like me, which is, you know, and it's not that we're adversarial, but, if I can share the things that made me think a little bit deeper or a little bit differently, then that's what I'm there for. I'm not that I'm there to kind of help them find the best in themselves, even if it's not what I'm saying. It's just something in the way it's said. So I think the last year, there's been times over the years where I have not opened the mail for 4 months because I can't bring myself to do it. It was just that one extra thing I couldn't do it. So, what you see as vibrant here, it's not always been like that, but I just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And there are days when putting one foot in front of the other was not so easy. It's easy when I have the kids because that allowed me to just say, all right, Nicole, you just need to just get through today.
Do it for them. Yeah.
Need to get through today. Just need to do this. And it's about picking things apart and just taking one step and making that an achievement and one step. So I've kind of been through that. And I think the battle scars, I've always been quite open about things, but the battle scars are also part of what gives me a foundation. Absolutely.
That's
and
awesome.
I would say the key thing of the last probably year and a half is I was quite happy to I always say, look, I didn't need a government directive to tell me to keep away from people. But that's actually not really healthy. So I kind of enjoyed it for a while. But then it was like, all right, Nicole, enough. It's time for you to contribute. It's time for you, don't squander and don't waste your time. Enough already. So complacency, and it's kind of working with my own brain, like you're being complacent and all that sort of stuff. I thought, yeah, you know what? I've got far too many opportunities handed to me or far too many opportunities that I've worked for me to be sitting around doing nothing.
Wow.
So, I enjoyed, should I say that out loud? I really enjoyed the downtime of last year.
I think you can say that out loud. I think there'd be a lot of people that will be listening going, hell yeah, me too.
But at some point it's like, all right, this is not downtime. This is just you. This is you not doing your thing and not being you. So I actually that's when I start to do some really kind of basic goal setting and planning. All right, so what's my social thing for today? Because you cannot be an island in a global economy for long.
Yes. It's nice to come in and recharge and refresh and regroup if that's what we need. And I talk about that a lot, there's a lot of people that I work with that are like, just go all the time. It's like, when I remember, like, a car runs out of fuel and you can't just keep pushing the accelerator pedal. You've got to go fill your car up with fuel. You've got to stop. So we need that to some extent, don't we? But it's when we sit there for too long, when that becomes the norm, and like you say, that spark is gone, that energy's gone, that color has gone, and we're not doing that thing that we get our passion and our energy and our drive from anymore. That's when we need to pull ourselves up, isn't it? Or have help from someone to pull us up.
What I think though is you kind of lose your motivation. And when you lose your motivation, it's really easy to, that's why I use the word complacent, though it's possibly not. I've been trying to work out the exact word for it. Last year made it really easy for us to, we were very careful to have coffee catch-ups. Like, I've been using Zoom forever. So, coffee catch-ups on Zoom, phones, things like that. Now that everyone's kind of getting back into it, it's really easy to let those things go. And that's where I decided, right, what are the things that I miss? It's that companionship, it's those deep conversations, it's that intimacy and connection. So I put in the diary, in my goals, social.
I love that.
Moving social, because I just won't do it. And that's not necessarily good for me.
Yes, I 100% hear you. I'm someone very much driven on connection and, a very extroverted personality. Like I bounce off other people. Like that's where I get my energy from, by outwardly expressing myself to other people. That said, I can very, very easily find time, find joy in my own company. But when I stay there for too long, as we've just talked about, we can spiral. Yeah. So that would be, I'm again putting words in your mouth here. That sounds like that's a non-negotiable for you as well, as that non-negotiable social connection, social time.
And it makes the peace, because I love my peace. My God, I love it. I've learnt that it's actually really amazing. It's not because I'm, the old days I'm like the Tassie devil. That's kind of habit, and that's not who I am. I can fire up and do that. Contracts come and I'll just work like a Trojan for 3 months.
Yeah.
But I won't work like I did at the expense of.
Yeah.
So what it means is it allows me to value my peace and enjoy it more. Yeah. And not look at it as kind of downtime.
I love it. I could just continue this conversation forevermore. I think it's fantastic. So your energy, that I've said it many times, it's so refreshing. It's so enlightening. And I trust that everyone listening has got heaps out of this. If people want to connect with you, find you, talk to you, how can they find you? We'll put all the links in the show notes as well, but how can people find you?
I've had LinkedIn forever. And that's, I think I worked out, it was like when it first started.
Wow.
Yeah, I cut off, for 18 months, I cut off all my socials. I cut off everything, and it was the most blissful thing I did. It was amazing how many people after about a year messaged me, because you can still have Messenger, you see. I learned interesting things about socials, abusing me for blocking them because they couldn't find me. Not one of them had checked to see whether it was just them I blocked. Remember I said, don't take it personally? And I just said, look, thank you for checking in with me. I've actually had some downtime with what's going on, because a lot of people had no idea what else was going on in my personal life anyway, because I was very private about that. It's just interesting. So, yeah, and website, I'll send you the link. You'll recognise it. It just says, Nicole, I solve problems. That's me.
I love it. So we'll post all those links in the show notes. Before we go, though, I do have some quick fire questions. If you're ready for a bit of quick fire action. Okay. All right. This is something that I'm asking all my guests. I just think it's a nice quirky bit of fun. Fun and quirkiness is one of my core values. So hell, why not throw this in at the end?
Yeah.
All right. So first up, what are you reading at the moment?
Lucy Bloom was a speaker at the International Women's Day event. She is an absolute hoot. Go look for her, the Lucy Bloom. And her book's called Get the Girls Out.
Ah, awesome. So that's a recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's right there on the screen. Look at that.
It's Lucy with her bright pink hair. Yeah, she's powerful, entertaining, inspiring, and yeah, she's a good sort. So yeah.
Love it.
Signed the book for me, so I've just about finished it.
Fabulous. Awesome. What is your favorite song of all time and why?
Oh, there's so many. Right now, I've been listening to Iris. It's just, I've always found it really hard to be me and to let people know who I am.
I know the song you mean now. I'm starting to sing it in my head. Yep. Love it.
Yeah, and it's a gorgeous song. So, but I walked down the aisle to Van Halen, so it's a song thing for me.
Music. Again, a whole other conversation. Music is super powerful. Yeah. We've done a few of these through this conversation, but what's a quote that's changed your life?
Definitely the whole you're not connected to them by DNA, Nicole. It's just popped into my head one day.
Yeah.
And I just thought, you know what? Oh my God, yes. So it's like, don't make it always, let it go.
Let it go. Let it go. I'm not going to sing. Oh gosh, Claire, stop.
You sound better than I do. That's for sure.
Next question, moving on. What's a piece of software, an app, or a piece of tech that has changed how you do business?
Oh, my Mac. I'm sorry. Once you go Mac, you'll never go back.
Leave us with a practical tip or a life hack. You've left us with so much gold, but what's one more, or reiterating something you've already said?
It's just yeah, if not now, when? Don't take things personally. Look at them with perspective. Even if it is personal, doesn't mean you have to take it personally. Look at where it fits. If you learn something from it, great. And if you don't, ditch it and move on.
Yes. Oh my God, it's so their problem, not ours.
Yep. I always say it sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. And the other is there's a gift in everything. That's it. That's the thing I always say. There is a gift in everything.
Oh my goodness, just so much gold in that conversation. I could have continued talking to Nicole for hours, but obviously conscious of the time I'm spending in your ears. So thank you again to Nicole for a fabulous conversation. And as we said previously, all of her contact details will be in the show notes to this episode as well. Nicole, for me, has such a refreshing perspective on life. And whilst it should be remembered that that has come from some quite major personal challenges and the grief of losing her husband a few years ago, but that philosophy, we never know. We just don't know what life has in store for us. And it just pays, therefore, to live each day to its absolute fullest, doesn't it? To if we're thinking of things that we want to do, go out and do them, because we just cannot guarantee tomorrow. And that might sound morbid, but it's also true. We absolutely cannot guarantee tomorrow. And I've had personal experience of that in the last week or two as well. We just don't know what's around the corner. So if there is something that anyone listening to this podcast wants to do, then I say, hell, go and do it. Go and give it a damn good go. Alrighty then, that is enough from me. Remember to hit that subscribe button in your podcast app of choice so you never miss another episode of Real Life Business as it drops. And if you are listening on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, then please leave me a 5-star review, because it really does help build awareness and gain momentum for the show. If you've loved this episode and think someone in your network needs to hear it, share it with them. And remember, you can continue the conversation on Facebook or Instagram, and the links to those communities will be in the show notes to this episode. Alrighty, that's all from me. Until next time, bye-bye.